Welcome to Stoked with Megan McPhail, the podcast that helps you get super effing jazzed about your work, life, and bank account. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become a seven-figure business coach, entrepreneur, and elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on inspiring others to do the same. Are you ready to say goodbye to the 9-to-5 grind and start going after some big, bold dreams? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail.
And your co-host, Todd Reedy.
Before we get into the episode, can you please take a second out of your day and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? We would appreciate it so much. And the more reviews we have, the more people will learn about this podcast and listen to it, and we can change more lives. So I appreciate it so much. Today's episode, you might think I'm crazy, but it's all about this idea that money is imaginary. And I'm going to explain how this thought process helped us buy our dream house recently. So before we get into the money stuff, I do want to share that we just closed on our house in Taos, New Mexico, more specifically in Arroyo Seco, which is a little village outside Taos in northern New Mexico. It's super close to Taos Ski Valley. We're going to be able to drive 12 minutes and go skiing. It's close to hiking, mountain biking, climbing, rafting. What else am I missing? All kinds of fun outdoor activities, camping, exploring, just being outdoors. There's cows as our neighbors in the back. I'm super stoked. And
I'm stoked too.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the reason we're able to buy it is because I've been convincing myself lately that money is not real and it's just imaginary. And so I'm going to explain. So obviously, we know money. I mean, you can use paper money and coins, but at this point, it's pretty much all digital. And if I transfer money from a checking account to a savings account, or if I transfer money and pay on my credit card, like, are bills actually being exchanged between banks and stuff?
No way.
Yeah. There's no way that physical money is being transferred, right? So it's literally just pixels on our phone screens or our computer screens at this point, right? So I was thinking about that because I had a coaching student at one point tell me that she had some credit card debt, I think, from building her business and stuff. And she had so much shame and guilt surrounding this debt. And I just told her, I was like, you are letting pixels on a screen dictate how you see yourself, dictate your self-worth, dictate the negative thoughts that you're telling yourself. And you walk around all day shaming yourself for having this debt when it's literally just pixels on a screen. Like, it doesn't even really exist. Right?
Kinda. Yeah, so I'm going to take a little bit more contrarian view and play devil's advocate here and kind of question some of your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, they are just numbers that are floating around in this digital space. But wealth is real and debt is real. But I don't think we should let it influence our decisions and our emotions as much as it does.
Yeah, and that's really what I'm getting at, is the way that money affects our emotions and our moods and our self-worth. It's not beneficial to anybody. If you have $20K worth of debt, which, by the way, I put $20K on my credit card like every month, you guys. But if you have debt of any amount, and I have 6 figures worth of student loans still, and I've had that around my neck forever, and I used to let it really bring me down and, again, think that I'd never buy a home. Obviously, we just bought our dream home. So I had all these negative thoughts associated with that, and that's what's not healthy. It just doesn't help anything. Like, you're not going to pay that off by feeling bad about it and like shaming yourself. I mean, people like Dave Ramsey, that's what they teach you, that if you have debt, you're basically a horrible person. And like, how dare you go out to a restaurant, or how dare you get your nails done? Like, why can't we just live even if we have debt and just kind of forget about it? I don't mean to just like forget that it exists, but stop attaching so many emotions to it. Like, I was even talking to my mom the other day because she's got a huge scarcity mindset. And I was like, if I told you a gallon of milk these days cost 6,000 Icelandic krona or something. And I'm just literally pulling that out of nowhere. I don't know if that exchange is correct or whatever. But if I told you that, would you think that's a good deal, or would you think that that's super expensive, and would you be upset about it? And she was like, well, I don't know. You'll have to tell me. And I'm like, you just don't have any feelings, emotional feelings to me saying that it's a 6,000 Icelandic krona gallon of milk. And she's like, no, you got to tell me, like, what is that in dollars? And I've seen this when we're traveling and we're just buying whatever because we don't know what the exchange rate is. And so we have like no emotional connection to it. But if I tell you a gallon of milk is $12, you're pissed. You're blaming the president. You're blaming the economy. You think the world sucks. You're going to talk about it around dinner and everyone's going to be pissed about the gallon of milk prices. When we could also just exist in a world where we don't have all these emotions attached to money.
Yeah. And a more like personal example of this, within the last couple of months, we went out to Arizona to shoot an elopement. And gas in New Mexico is like relatively inexpensive. So I think right now it's maybe like $3.30, $3.50. And
I think I actually saw one that was like $2.99.
Oh, dang. Okay. So when we're traveling out there, I'm like noticing how much gas is in Utah and Arizona. And it's like $4.50. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like $4.50. Like, it's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like we're not going to fill up with gas. Like, we're taking a road trip and we need the gas. Yeah. So yeah, there was an emotional reaction there, but like it didn't matter at the end of the day. Like, we needed to buy gas when we needed it.
Yeah. I mean, we bought the gas and we're fine. Nothing bad happened because we bought $4.50 gallon gas or whatever.
Yeah. But that initial like change. And again, like all these numbers are like relative, right? So like gas prices now, if you compare them to like during COVID, were like astronomical now. Or like anything, like go back 10 years, to go back 20, go back 30, 40 years, things were so much cheaper. And like if you let that influence like your mood and like emotions around like buying anything, even just like the staples, necessities to live, it's a sadder place to live than you should be living in.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't know what the cost of a gallon of milk is, and I don't pay attention to the prices of our groceries. And I know that that's very fortunate for us because a lot of people don't experience that. And I think that's the difference between working a W-2 job where your income is fixed versus being an entrepreneur where there's no limit to the money that you can make. Because I know when I was burning out as a veterinarian and sick of living in apartments, and I was living in Denver and I was looking at house prices, and this was back in 2017. So they weren't even as bad as they are now, but they were still bad. It was like $500K for a shitty fixer-upper. And I couldn't even, with my student loans and my income, I couldn't even afford that if I wanted to. So I was like, F this, F that. The economy sucks. Everything sucks, like I can't afford a house. And if I do get a house, I'm going to be trapped in my vet job forever. And I hate my vet job and I can't do another day of this, And it just sucked and everything sucked. And the world sucked and the economy sucked and everything sucked. And now I don't feel that way. I mean, we literally just bought our dream house and people were like, oh, the economy and the market and the mortgage rates or whatever. And I just went into it like, okay, how much money do I need to afford a house that I like? And how do I make that money? How do I save up for this down payment? And okay, mortgage rates are this amount. All right, that will make it this amount monthly. Can we afford that? The numbers they are what they are. I don't have any control over it. So why am I going to sit around and mope when I can do something about it?
Yeah. And like you said, we are in a very fortunate position, right? We don't have kids. We do have a lot of your student loan debt, but we've made certain decisions with finances to live the life that we want to. So let me kind of play devil's advocate here, as I told you I was going to. I can imagine like folks that have, say, like several children that they have to feed and are planning to pay for college or whatever that may look like. Money is very real, where they're maybe in a W-2 job. And yeah, those paychecks only go so far and money can be kind of stressful. Like I know that when I was working my W-2 job, probably more than I needed to, I was stressed about money. Like even with a good income and no kids, what would you say to like folks that actually are a little bit more living on a tighter budget?
I mean, I'm not here to solve the W-2 job employees' problems, because my whole solution is to not work a W-2 job because they fucking suck. And they will always keep you broke. Even when you go into advanced schooling and you get all the degrees like me and you did, and we go and we get a job, they still only pay us enough so that we always feel like we're struggling. And I remember you telling me stories about your job when you were still working at the lab that at the end of the year, when like if the budgets weren't used up, and it could be what, millions of dollars or something, you'd have to buy all kinds of dumb shit to use up the budget. But God forbid they give anybody a raise. You'd have to fight tooth and nail to get a freaking raise. But to buy a whole bunch of parts and tools and desk chairs, and I mean, you can tell the story, right?
Yeah, it's just we were given a budget that was like approved by the government. And if we didn't spend it all by the end of the fiscal year, then it went back to them, as well as then they wouldn't give us as much the following year. So like we were very incentivized to like use up the entire budget. And that often was like spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last month of the year on whatever we could get to like invoice in time to like get it in time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a bit ridiculous. That never went to bonuses or raises. It was like purely equipment or stuff that maybe we didn't need, but the money had to be spent. So yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then there's one time you saved them like millions of dollars on a deal and you got what, a $50 thank you card or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So the money is there. I mean, that's the big thing. There's always money for the things that make businesses more money or whatever, But W-2 employees, they're always going to give them the bare minimum. Always. I heard somebody describe a job as JOB, just over broke. They're never going to pay you enough to where you feel like, oh yeah, this is great. It's always going to be just over the amount where you're like struggling, but maybe not too much if you have an advanced degree. But even when I was making like $100K as a vet, I had to work my ass off for that $100K. And I had to just fight tooth and nail for a raise. But, you want to buy $100,000 worth of office chairs? That's no problem. But maybe an extra $5K a year for Megan? Hell no, So, I mean, that's the problem with all this stuff. And then it really keeps us in this situation where we're not thriving as W-2 employees. And we are sitting around the office, the water cooler, or the dining room table, and we're complaining. And it's almost like this learned helplessness where the world sucks and there's nothing we can do about it. But there is something you can do about it, which is entrepreneurship. And even a lot of the entrepreneurs that I know, like photographers, are even playing it small because there's just unlimited potential out there to make money. And I think a lot of us bring this struggle and this mindset that we have, all these emotional feelings we have about money, we bring that with us into entrepreneurship. And I've had my days of scarcity. I definitely have my days. But just reminding myself that like, I have no control over this stuff, but I do have control over my income to a certain extent. And I'm continuously playing around with it and seeing what I can do to help people that also makes me money. And then I basically, for a couple of years, was looking at home prices, and yeah, they're going up, and yeah, mortgage rates are going up, but so is my income. And having just this neutral mindset about it all, instead of like, woe is me, things are so expensive. Like, it just is what it is. And why be so upset about it when you can do something about it?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the doing something about it is easy. We have both gone through shit to be able to quit our jobs and do this. And yeah, like somebody working a W-2 job who's like basically dug themselves into a hole with their mortgage and their kids and their cars and all that kind of stuff. It is hard to change that. But I saw myself doing that where I was like, I wanted to buy a house and had the cars and I had the expensive apartment because I'm a doctor and I deserve this and all that stuff. And really what it just got me into was a hole where I was stuck. And you can either stay in that hole and cruise and be upset about everything, or you can unstick yourself, which is uncomfortable. And I downgraded my apartment and I sold my cars. And I did do the whole Dave Ramsey thing of eating beans and rice. And I just got myself out of it. And that's why we're fortunate today, because of that, because of those sacrifices and the work. So it's not easy, but it's easier to do what I did or what we have done than to keep coasting as a W-2 employee.
Yeah. And we've also made kind of decisions on where we want to spend our money, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like we're buying the best of everything. We've been intentional with how we spend the money that we do have.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that's key. Even when I was a W-2 employee, my emotions were all over the place about money. Like if I got an extra bonus, I would go right out and buy something that I had been denying myself for a long time, you know? And that's also the psychology about money and why if somebody is living in poverty and they get $500, they're not going to put that in a savings account. They're going to go buy something that they've been denying themselves. That's just the psychology of it. You say no, 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 no to yourself long enough, just like with cookies and ice cream, you know, then one day you're going to binge out on a whole sleeve of Oreos, you know, and like that's just kind of human nature. And I've experienced that. And like now I don't experience that as much because if I want something, I'm able to get it. And if it's reasonable and makes sense, I'm able to like kind of take a lot of my emotions out of it. Why are you smiling and laughing at me?
No, because I'm just thinking of an example that I don't know where I first read this or where I came across it, but the idea is one, like if you have a book, you should never pay more than $1 for a bookmark because the dollar can just serve as that purpose. But then the next level of that is to use like $100 bill as your bookmark or to keep $100 bill in your wallet. And initially I thought that was dumb and I thought that was risky. Like I shouldn't be walking around with a $100 bill. But the premise of that is to kind of train your mind that, yeah, like $100 isn't that big of a deal to just like have on you. And so I did that for a while. I like kept $100 and it like slowly kind of like lost its edge of, oh my God, I'm carrying around $100. It's just, again, it's like a relative thing.
Yeah, it's just interesting. And I remember a couple years ago when I started making more money from coaching and stuff like that, I ended up buying a Louis Vuitton wallet. And I was really proud of that wallet. And it's funny because now, and it got stolen in Chile, in Santiago. And I was really sad about that. But then when I look at buying another wallet, I'm just like, I just don't care about buying a $700 wallet. Before it was like, oh, I can show off that, you know, I don't know. There's just like this prideful thing in being able to buy that. Right now I'm using like literally like a $12 wallet. I got it on Amazon like 5 years ago and it's falling apart. And like, that's what I'm using. And I just don't care, you know? So it's interesting to me how things progress and how the thoughts about money change. And it's really this dynamic relationship that you have with it that's constantly changing. And I've been through all the different shifts with money. Like I've been the angry person complaining about society, and I've been the person worrying about money and having like a panic attack and calling my dad and being like, I can't do this anymore, you know, and like, why is life so hard? And so I've been through all of those things. And yeah, once you become an entrepreneur and you start consciously shifting your ideas about money and seeing it differently and seeing it more neutrally, that's where things really get exciting, where you stop connecting money to all these weird emotional things and needs and wanting to show it off. And like whatever it is, it just becomes more of a neutral resource. And that's how we were able to buy our dream house.
Yeah, and that evolution is pretty cool to watch. And like the emotions even attached to changing your emotions with money, right? There's like different seasons in life. And so, yeah, we both went kind of through that when money is tight and we like really anxious about it. And now like, again, we go in these waves. And so I think just acknowledging that like whatever your emotions are, your like feelings about money in this instant aren't going to be what they may be tomorrow or a year from now or 10 years from now for lots of different reasons, right? Making more, having a change in lifestyle, location, family, business, W-2, entrepreneurship. So like, again, like all of these things are dynamic. And so just acknowledging that what you may be going through right now won't be forever and it'll get better.
But I think you need to make it clear that these shifts don't just happen. You have to consciously choose to make it happen.
That is 100% true.
And I've seen you go through a lot of variations, because when we first met, you were extremely frugal, didn't want to have a cleaning person. If you could do it yourself, that's what you were going to do. And we're even nervous when we bought our first house in Albuquerque, which was only like the mortgage was just a couple $100 over what we were paying for rent.
Previously, yeah.
Yeah. And then seeing you through this whole house buying process recently, and you've just been totally cool with everything. Maybe shitting yourself internally a little bit, but I'm really proud of you.
Oh, thanks.
Because it's all going to work out.
Yeah. And if you're a longtime listener, I don't know what episode it was, but probably within the first 10 episodes of the show, we had just moved to our old house in Albuquerque, and I wanted to get a new toaster oven because the old one basically broke. And I didn't want to spend the $100 on a new toaster oven. I went back and forth. Should we buy a cheap one? Should we buy a nice one? Mm-hmm. And this was like a saga. And so on one of these episodes, finally I gave an update. We bought the toaster oven. And a year later, here we are. The toaster oven is with us. And I use it probably most days, probably more days than not, I use this toaster oven. And again, it was a thing that I was sweating because I got a good one. It was maybe $150 or whatever. And
yeah, you researched the hell out of that toaster too.
And is my life any better? Probably not. Is it any worse? No. Does our bank account reflect or care that there's $150 less in it?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. No, it's just drip in the bucket of this long life and all of the money that we're going to make and we're going to spend. And now we have a nice toaster oven that we'll have for many years to go on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And we can put it in our house soon. We just closed last night, but yeah, we're still waiting to get the keys and actually move in. So yeah, our next podcast episode will probably be from that house, unless we do another one here. So what I want you to do, listeners, my favorite people in the whole world, is practice recognizing what emotions you have when it comes to money, and do those emotions serve you? Are they helping you improve your life? Are they helping you make more money? Are they helping you feel better about life and money? Because if they are, it's not serving you. All these emotional reactions we have, and let's practice having more of a neutral mindset about money, and that it is what it is, and that, there's enough money in the world, even though I don't really know how money works now, that everything's so digital, but theoretically there's enough money in the world for every single human being to have $1 billion net worth. So there's plenty of freaking money out there. And I'm pretty sure they just create more of it whenever they want. They being, I don't know, governments or whatever. But just practice having this neutral mindset and making things work. And you can absolutely do that as an entrepreneur. As a W-2 employee, not so much, but as an entrepreneur, you can make as much money as you need to have the life that you want to live. And I swear by that. And I want you to start believing it too. So thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Stoked with Megan McPhail. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring content, check us out on Instagram at Stoked with Megan McPhail. And to learn more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you quit your 9-to-5, visit my website at meganmcphail.com. I hope this leaves you feeling stoked. See you next week.